all together and we have different spaces. Yeah, there's some abstract art and my kind of art. And yes, let's check it. Natasha Tsozik, and I'm glad to be part of these open studios. I was invited by my artist friend Melissa, and this is her house, and she invited me and other artists to be a part of this one. And here you can see all of my works that are in this entrance space. Mostly I like to draw portraits, some botanical arts, animals. I don't have anything deep specific meaning in it, but I like to convey animal rights, for example, in my art. This piece, you can see here a pig and a pug, and in our culture they consider to be different creatures, like one people eat, another one people adore, but in reality, they are the same, they're equal, and these pieces, these three works, they're called equal because I consider them to be equal. Another big part of my art is tattooing. I am a tattooer personally, and I like to be inspired by this and doing this not only on skin but on some other materials, for example like rubber skin. Also putting the tattoo related art on some objects like this teddy bear, for example. And I also like to combine different art spheres. I can take Art Nouveau and combine it with Japanese art, for example, to draw some Japanese monsters. So I try to explore shapes and beautiful forms and not to be stuck on some meaning.
Okay, so I'm Joyce Conlon, and I was invited to do the Sawyer Street Studios by Melissa after meeting her at the Jen Tuff Gallery, where we were in a show called Women in the Abstract. So the work that's behind me, these two paintings and one that's out of view, were completed at the MacDowell Colony over the last 5 weeks. And they're based on maps. My interest in maps comes out of being adopted myself and having done a big move across country and being feeling very powerfully moved by the refugee crisis in Europe. And so these paintings are about loss and dislocation. And when I was at the MacDowell Colony, I started to bring old maps into the equation. And I had like a book, and I would look on the internet at old maps and try to bring in some of the language of old maps. You can see in these two paintings that there's sort of a pattern on the outside, and those are the reference to the longitude and latitude, and this is like an Asian description of the sea that's just kind of abstract and of interest to me. The actual sort of land mass, if you will, came from a map that I actually found on the internet, and I was never able to find it again, so I can't tell you what map it was or how old it was, but some of these pieces are older, and I'm probably supposed to keep standing here. the next two pieces, well, the next piece that you can see is an older piece of mine that I was working on, just using pattern, sort of a sense of the aerial landscape, but a non-specific sort of memory of place. At the end of the day, my paintings are experimental, and I use the language of abstraction, and the new thing that I've brought to the mix is the language of maps, especially old maps, and memories of places that where I have been or that were important to me. That's it. So, can I walk away now?
Hi, I'm Barbara Bryn Klare, and this is our Sawyer Street Open Studios. All right. So this work is a fountain pen ink, and I've really enjoyed working with that a lot. It's very temperamental. It's actually, I saw an article once where I was talking about how fountain pen is the best for the unhurried line, and I just love that concept of this unhurried line, and slowing ourselves down enough to think about what the next line might be. And a lot of people ask me, well, how do you do it? And well, yeah, I use a ruler, obviously. I can't draw a straight line for the life of me. So, so this piece has kind of two layers going on. It's a lot about this fountain pen parallel line work that I do, but it also has to do with graphic symbols. I've been working with a lot of symbols. So these are all made up from haiku and from origami. So I'm really fascinated by that. I like to make a lot of imaginary diagrams and things like that. I did that when I was a kid. Something and nothing all at the same time. They mean something to me. This one is a rose. This one is like a shield. And this one is a flower from the side. So it kind of has a little bit of like a War and Peace, softness, shield, warlike thing going on. So this piece is more of the lines, but it's also about trying to simulate weaving. And when I went to Iceland on the residency there, I worked a whole lot. It was a textile residency, so I worked a whole lot on trying to create in ink what a textile looks like, and then to work with it a little more and take it a little farther. And I'm pleased with how this came out. It has the lightness here. This is when the fountain pen starts to kind of dry up inside, and so I live for that. I can't wait until it does that. So this is when I started, and then it just sort of faded out, and I was trying to do kind of like a, like those Oriental rugs that have been loved and walked on, and they're just like threadbare and everything, so I was trying to do that. So that's what that piece is about. When I went to Iceland, I was looking for this particular shade of blue, and that I took everything with me, like cyanotype chemicals and fountain ink and everything, and I worked with that blue. And then, so now I have a ton of blue materials, and I don't want to waste them. So I'm still staying with the blue, even though I may be done with it really soon. So one of these days I'll get past it and, do something else. It's a blue period, that's right. I like that.
Hi, I'm Melissa Mohammadi, and this is my studio. This year for San Francisco Open Studios with ArtSpan, I decided to invite a group of artists to show work with me, and I hope to create a space for community. And so I reached out to some people I knew, some people I didn't know, whose work I admired, and I wanted to fill my house with. And it's been great. It's so exciting to have my house full of all this gorgeous work. My work has evolved in the past few years. I used to work with maps, drawing terrain and topography and layers of weather, trying to draw relationships that happened outside of political borders, and trying to understand the kind of unifying aspect of our existence here. Just recently started drawing more meditative studies of plants and shells and things I'd collected over travels, and I felt like I was off track because they weren't politically motivated, but then I realized after a while drawing them that I was kind of drawing the same things, like the way that like a big lavender plant will grow. It kind of mimics neural pathways, and I think about these things a lot as I raise 3 kids and think about how the world, the environment I create for them helps them lay down their neural tracks and bring them back to a harmonious center, and how will they interact with the world as adults? Like how am I helping them grow as plants? Or when I draw like barnacle encrusted mussels or these really slow built sea creatures, their remnants, I think a lot about that, how resilient they are, how they've built themselves up over time, these really intricate, tiny repetitive moments, laying down layers of calcification, and how incredibly productive they are, and these little tiny moments build up. And that feels a lot like mothering to me, like raising people. It's these incredible amounts of tiny invisible labor, every caress and every, nutritious bite and every, piece of language or music builds their home, And so I just keep drawing these layers and layers of meditative studies, and they're soothing and healing to me. And then I'm finding that they're kind of healing and soothing to other people too. It's a selfish act, this drawing. It soothes me and centers me, and then I keep hearing people tell me that they feel the same way when they look at them. It's so rewarding. And so my art historical inspirations were what I'm looking at, and my background as a studio artist influenced these images too. So I'm really inspired by medieval manuscript painting, and mostly in Iran, 15th, 16th century, which is before I met my husband and have an Iranian last name. It's weird. But so I'm really interested in these fine lines and these devotional, meditative, intimate drawings in books. And I really loved learning about medieval art history and finding that the same kinds of decorative, dense, surface, botanical illustrations also show up in France in great big tapestries. That this compressed space that creates this kind of strange spiritual world you can be sucked into but not exist in, are really across the Eurasian continent. There's not an east-west divide in medieval times. So that's really exciting to me from a historical perspective, and I respond to the seductive materials and line work and colors, and that's where these guys are coming from. And I'm also inspired by printmaking. I stopped printmaking when I had kids, and I stopped oil painting because I couldn't be near fumes. And it was 10 years of having babies and nursing. So it's strange to rebuild my my whole studio practice, my mark making, my language, my materials, which I think is a little insidious part of our sexist world that nobody prepared me through undergrad and grad school. Like, hey, when you have babies, you can't breathe any of this stuff. So I rebuilt my mark making and language and material with non-toxic materials, usually on paper and water-based or pastel. But I'm still trying to layer images in the way that I did with printmaking, which is always full of surprises. If I'm not in control of the image, then they grow in their own way, in the same way that my subject matter grows in its own kind of chaotic way and builds its own new relationships.
Hello, my name is David Willburn. I am an artist from Fort Worth, Texas. I'm happy to be here participating in San Francisco Open Studios here at Sawyer Street Studios. One of the reasons why I'm happy is because I love San Francisco, and I love the idea of having my work in San Francisco visible to hopefully a new audience outside of Texas. This is my work right here. Recently, I've been working with a lot of mixed media on paper, a lot of painting and collage with a little bit of drawing. I take my cues from various social and political events and social institutions, news stories. I'm interested in craft media. I think since grad school I've had kind of a love affair with craft media and finding ways to work it into the fine art or the tradition of fine art like painting and drawing. I use a lot of fibers in my work. Specifically, I use muslin because it's such a great material. I stitch on it, I can draw on it, I stretch it around frames. And in this case, most of these pieces have painted muslin because it's such a great surface to work with. I'm interested in the architecture or structures that reference architectural elements such as walls and fences and other kinds of boundaries, because I'm really thinking about possible obstacles or structures that are used to divide, that either divide people or they divide ideas, or they even cause a kind of division within ourselves, an inability, creating an inability to determine one side from the other, or right from wrong, or left from right. No pun intended. So yeah, that is my work, and thank you.
My name's Todd Hanson. I live in San Francisco. I've been in the area for 30 years. I met Melissa through Instagram. She tracked me down and asked me if I wanted to participate with the Sawyer Street Studio. So I had seen her work and just loved the beauty of it. And apparently this is something that she did too as a response to the political climate, was to respond with exercise and beauty, which I could relate to. So I was happy to join her, and here we are. So these pieces I started after the Trump election. I was very frustrated and felt like I wanted to do something a little bit more proactive with my art. Yet I didn't want it to be dogmatic or too obvious. So moving away from a really fastidious style of art, which was more of the paper cutting that I've been doing for years, this was a more playful dialogue about more an active resistance. And the pieces were given to me as a pile of scrap plywood that my friend had at his studio. He had maybe 2,000 of these cut off rectangles that he sort of challenged me to do something with. So I started putting them together and thought, well, how can I use this as a vocabulary, as building blocks? And I tried to not change them as much as possible, using the actual material and medium as it was. And I was thinking about seeing people in protests and their postures and the different situations that they were in. These figures were meant to be both playful and expressive of different either states of mind, being passive or active in their sort of declarations of being from defeated to being in a particular state of resistance, like this one, which I named Resist. That they all were with this in mind, but also wanting to be playful, so people didn't have to see them in that way. And that was the motivation behind them. They were really fun to do, and it was a really refreshing approach to the art, which had felt really frustrating and not a powerful enough in a way. It's as most of the cutout pieces are exercises in visual geometry and engagement of the mind on a different level. And I wanted to do something a little bit more proactive, so that was the basis for these pieces.